Hey guys, Matthew here, and today I want to bring you guys a very special video. Today we're going to be talking about harvest crafting, and I want this guide to be the ultimate guide to crafting any item using harvest. Now this is going to be a long shot, and realistically I don't know if I'll actually be able to convey everything that I need to talk about in this video and make it as understandable as possible for both newer players and, veterans of the game. Now, I would like to consider myself to be one of the best crafters in the game, or at least one of the most knowledgeable, because I really don't think there is any skill whatsoever when it comes to crafting. It's all about, do you know or do you not know? There's no better crafter than any other crafter. There are the people who do know and the people who don't know. I want this video to turn you guys into people who know, so you can actually take advantage of this, because crafting is, above and beyond, by far the best money-making method in the entirety of the game. Exploits aside. So let's talk about crafting. Now, I could go ahead and make a video on how to craft this wand, right? Which is a harvest crafted wand, a perfect wand for Penance brand. I could go ahead and make a video on how to craft this chest piece or this helmet. I could go ahead and make a video for each and every one of these crafts that my character is using. But instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you guys basically a set of rules and a set of tools that you can use to actually come up with these different crafts and exactly how to do them from beginning to end, no matter the craft, no matter what. Now, the thing is, of course, not every single item in the game is going to be harvest craftable. Not every single mod in the game has a tag. There's definitely some things that we'll need to cover, but I'll try to go in as much detail as possible during the video. Again, this is going to be a long one, and there's a lot to talk about, so pull out your pens and your pencils. It's time to take some notes. Now, the reason why I'm not going to make a video on every single one of these crafts and how exactly they're made from step by step is quite easy. If I make a video and I tell you guys, yo, craft this Penance brand helmet, you're going to make a ton of currency, within the next 2 or 3 days, chances are the Penance brand helmet has lost like 50% of its value, and in some cases even more. I remember during Harvest League, I made a guide on how to craft bleed bows, and within a day, they had gone from 40x to 15x. Now, this is not necessarily a bad thing, as it makes very high-end items available to much more players, but for the people who are trying to craft for a profit, there's no advantage there. So let's get right into it, because again, there's a lot to talk about. First off, there's going to be 2 tools that you're going to need to get accustomed with when it comes to crafting. Now, this video is not going to be about all of the different crafting options that you have, including fossils or essences or chaos spam or anything like that. I really want to focus on harvest. And there's 2 tools you'll want to be using, and the first one is Poe Db. Now, Poe Db is basically the database of Path of Exile, which allows you to see every single mod on every single item and their weighting. The weighting is essentially the odds of actually getting the item. You have to take the weighting of a certain mod divided by the weighting of all the mods and all that. Now, we used to actually have to do all of this manually, but another tool that we have available to us nowadays is Path of Exile, which actually takes all of these mods and turns them into percentage chance without us having to do any of the work. So this is going to be the second most important tool that you need to actually get accustomed to using. And they actually added an emulator recently, which allows you to actually create an item from scratch, seeing kind of what it would look like to go about a certain way of crafting, which is also very nice addition to this website. So why do we still use Poe Db then? Well, the reason I use Poe Db is because it gives me a very good visual of what the mods are that I have available, and something I'll be talking about real soon when it comes to figuring out what mods have which tags, okay? So let's start with that, the basics of harvest crafting. If we go in the emulator and we try to create just any item, it doesn't really matter. We will see that if we go under harvest, right? If we go under harvest, we are going to get to see all of the different types of mods available through harvest crafting, because unfortunately not every single mod of the game is available through harvest. Mana, for example, stun and block recovery, those are things that you will not be able to mess around with harvest unless you're willing to do some gambling, such as non-influence to influence, but that's not something I want to talk about in this video. So we have the attack, caster, chaos, and so on. These are essentially the tags. Now these tags, you can see them, they're also very easy to see and visualize on the Poe Db website. And because of this, pairing this tool with this visual is going to give us pretty much the best experience when it comes to trying to figure out how to craft an item. So now let's talk about how we actually start off a craft, like for example, this wand, right? There's a lot of things going on here. Where do we start this wand? Because I can tell you that even though this wand and this wand look to be just about the same, the only difference is this is a Takates mod, right? Meaning it's a temple mod, while this is a non-temple mod. These two, while they look to be just about the same, except this one is slightly better, this one is significantly harder to craft and is going to be done in a much different way, because this one we can actually start from scratch. So these are all things that you will need to be able to realize and understand when looking into items that you're trying to understand how to actually come up with, you know, step by step. So where is the starting point in any item ever? If we're talking about an item which has something like a temple mod or an essence mod or any of these modifiers that are not available through harvest crafting, right? If I was to ever get rid of the Takates mod here, the spell damage and non-chaos is extra chaos, I cannot get this back on my item ever. The item itself is not tagged with the temple mod. This is just a temple mod on the item, meaning if that ever goes away, that's it, that's done, that's gone forever. And then we have to, you know, actually get a new base, which also will have the mod and start from scratch. So this is always going to be our starting point, is always going to be the hardest mod to get on the item. In this case, that would be the Takates mod. In this case here, which doesn't have the Takates mod, it would actually be the damage per power charge. Now, why is that? If we pay attention, if we look closely at the mods here, we'll see that all of them have mods that actually are harvest targetable through different tags, right? We have caster, we have critical, we have chaos, you know, physical, stuff like that. While if we look at increased damage per power charge, the only tag that it has is damage. Now damage, if we go back to our Craft of Exile, is not part of the types of harvest craft targeted mod, which means if I was to go ahead and look up a wand here, so this is what we'll do. We'll go to a wand because we're trying to craft a wand, right? And we would look at the damage per power charge. Now this is the first step. Sorry about that. This is going to be the first step. And now we obviously want to have an idea of what the item looks like in the end. So the idea here is that we are reverse engineering the item to come up with it. Now the next step would be to come up with these actual crafts without having a visual of what the item looks like in the end game. And these items would basically be theory crafted on Path of Building to figure out what is the best possible item for any given build. And then once you actually have a visualization of the item, you would try to essentially work it backwards, reverse engineer it to figure out how it's crafted. So let's go ahead and do just that with the wand, okay? So remember that I said that you're always going to start with the hardest mod available on the item. In this case, it's the Takates mod. Now, I'm not going to stop with the Takates mod because it would be significantly harder to actually craft. Well, it wouldn't be that much harder. It would just be a lot more steps. I'll actually start with the regular item here. So the one where the highest or the hardest mod is going to be the damage per power charge. So what we're going to do here is we are going to essentially start off with the hardest part, which, as we can see, the way that this is made here, the Poe Db website, we have the prefixes in front and then the suffixes in the back. So we know the damage per power charge is a Crusader suffix, which does not have a tag which we can target with harvest. So that means there's no good way to get this mod. The only real effective way is going to be through alt spamming, right? Because if you're alt spamming, at some point you're going to get this mod, and chances are you're going to get it by itself, or with another mod, which you might or may not be able to remove with harvest, but you can always imprint the item, annul it, and if you hit the power charge, imprint it back and go again until you get to the point where you have just the power charge, increased damage per power charge mod by itself on a rare item. So let's go ahead and get into emulator and make it happen. All right, so we'll go to one-handed weapons, we'll go to wand, and we'll go to let's just make a profane wand. Let's go with Crusader, item level 100, quality 30, doesn't really matter. Now what we need to do is basically put on the one mod, like I said, the damage per power charge, which is going to be our first and initial mod that we'll care about. So what we'll do here is we will go ahead and go to prefixes, and or sorry, suffixes, and then we will find the damage per power charge, which is going to be under Crusader mod. So we'll see it right here, and then we're just going to simply add it. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we want to make the wand rare. How you would do this in the game is, as I mentioned, imprints, then you would regal it, and then you would annul it, or depending on the price of imprints versus the price of the removes, you could use harvest to just remove fire. Now, since I have an emulator, I can just right-click it and remove it. At that point, this is my starting point for my wand. Now, if I was actually making a Tocati's wand, the only difference here would have been that instead of starting with a blue wand with my damage per power charge, I would have started with the hardest mod to get on my item, which would be the Tocati's mod. So I would start with a blue wand with Tocati's mod by itself. Now, the next thing I would do is I would go ahead and keep it blue and focus on the second hardest mod on my wand, which in this case is the damage per power charge. Now, because damage per power charge is an influence suffix, and a magic item can only have one prefix, which is the Tocati's, right? And then one suffix, if it's magic, no more than two. What we would do is we'd influence a basically a random influence, or just hit it with a Crusader Exalt. Now, you can't actually do that with a magic item, so what you would have to do is imprint it, augment a random influence until you get to Crusader. Then at that point, you would augment an influence modifier, which would be guaranteed to be a suffix, right? And at that point, you'd have to reroll influence modifier until you get this damage per power charge as alongside the Tocati's mod. Now, at that point, you've got the two hardest mods. It's time to go forward. So here's what we're going to do. Now, we can't actually put the Tocati's mods or the tempo mods in the emulator, I believe. So we're just going to go ahead and keep the damage per power charge as the example. Now, the next thing what we're going to want to do is we got to figure out, what do we care for and what should we be doing first, the prefixes or the suffixes? Now, in this case, the prefixes is +1 level to all physical spell gems and and physical damage as extra lightning. These both have the physical tag, and then the physical's extra lightning has the lightning tab, lightning as well as the physical tag, which are, of course, both things that we can influence through harvest crafting. So what are we going to want to do to figure out the best step to actually go ahead and do this? Well, I'm just going to use Control F, and I'm going to type physical. Now, this is going to give me a visual representation of how many physical mods are actually available on any item, basically. So in this case, we're working with a wand. Now, a wand can have a lot of physical mods, right? It can have this, it can have flat, percent, it can hybrid, it can have leech, as life, as mana. It can even have as extra chaos. It can have so many different mods. So how do we actually go about making this item craftable? Well, what we're going to focus on here is the mods that we actually want, and then we're going to work backwards. So which mods do we want here? The first mod is the +1 to all fizz, and the second mod is the physical damage as extra lightning. So let's have a look at what the physical spell gems actually has in terms of tags. It has the physical tag, but then it also has the caster tags, nothing else, right? And then if we look at the other mod, which is going to be a Crusader mod, it has the physical tag, right? And it also has the lightning tag, nothing else. So what that means, if we take a look at this, you'll see that all of the other ones, or at least the vast majority of them, have a tag which we can actually influence with the bench. Now, learning to use the bench alongside the harvest mechanic is going to be one of the most powerful tool that you have in your arsenal to make these crafts actually remotely even possible. Without bench mods, some of these harvest crafted items are basically a pipe dream, and you will never, ever, ever be able to do them. All right, so what do we have on all of the other items, or all of the other mods, sorry, that are not on our physical tag here, or our physical spell gems, or on the lightning one? Well, we have the attack tag. Now, the attack tag is available on all these mods. It's available on these two. It's also available here. So realistically, if we could find a way to remove any sort of attack modifiers to roll, we can actually guarantee that we are going to get the mods that we care for, can't we? Right? So what we have available to us in our arsenal in a crafted bench mod is going to be cannot roll attack modifiers. Now, in almost every single harvest craft nowadays, it's going to be paramount that you understand how these two mods are usable for every single craft, because they are game changers. Okay, So let's go ahead and have a look at this. If we were to do physical, right, an augment physical, you see there's no suffixes that are physical. There's no suffixes on Crusader either. There's only prefixes. So if I actually go ahead on the bench and I bench a suffix, which is cannot roll attack modifiers here, and I put this on my wand, what's going to happen if I augment physical? You'll see that if I augment physical, I am pretty much guaranteed to get the mods that I care for. So I'll augment physical. Now, what did I get? I got physical as extra chaos. Now, that's really easy to remove. We can simply remove chaos. Now, this would not apply if we were doing a Takati's craft, because the Takati also has the chaos tag. We would have to actually remove physical. But in this case, or at least for the other one, the one which does not have the Takati's mod, we can always really easily remove this physical as extra chaos by removing the chaos tag, which actually does not impair any other stats that we care for on the wand. So the fact that we got physical as extra chaos here means we actually got a block. Now, this block is not only a block, it essentially guarantees that the next augment slams that we do for physical are going to give us exactly what we care about, right? So if we augment it again, you'll see that we basically just guaranteed physical as extra lightning damage. And if we go again, it guarantees +1 spells. Now, how do we go about removing the physical as extra chaos? Very simple. We are going to remove a random chaos because we have no other chaos. Now, look at what we have here. We have all +1 to all fizz and physical as extra lightning, both tier 1. Now, of course, this might take some rerolls. It really depends on your luck here. I got pretty lucky. I got T1 on the first try, but realistically, it's like a 50-50, right? There's only, no, it's a 1 in 3 to actually get the T1, and then you're guaranteed to get the +1 fizz if you already have the fizz as extra chaos. Now, if you don't have the fizz as extra chaos, it does become a little bit harder, which is why I said these Takati's mods here. Sometimes the temple mods are going to make these crafts significantly harder, but in the case of something like this, you don't actually have to worry about anything like that. It is completely harvest craftable from beginning to end. All right, so now at this point, we've got the physics extra lightning, we've got the plus, and we've got the damage per power charge. Now, the next thing we need to do is have a look at the item and figure out what's the next mod we care about. What's the next hardest thing? Now, the next hardest thing in this case would probably be cast speed. Now, cast speed, if we actually go ahead and type in cast speed on a wand, you'll see that cast speed has the caster tag, but also the speed tag. If we pay attention to the speed tag, you'll see that there's cast speed, attack speed, and prod speed. There's a lot of speed tags, and you can only ever block attack if you were to do that, which means you would be left with cast speed and prod speed for a weighting of just around 11,000, and the good rolls are less than 1,000. Based on the price of speed rerolls, you know that that's not a good idea. So now let's look at how many caster tags there are. Well, of course, there's all these prefixes, right? Even some of the prefixes that we already have on our wand, such as the +1 fizz, such as the +1 fizz, sorry. That's a caster tag. So that means that we don't want to be touching these prefixes at all, right? If I do remove add caster right now on my wand, there's a chance that it's going to remove my physical gems. I don't want that to happen. So how do I protect my prefixes? Well, simple enough. I'm going to need to actually lock them up. If I lock them up using, again, one of these bench mods here, on the bench, we have this thing called prefixes cannot be changed. If I lock up my prefixes, then my physical spell gems is actually, it's actually locked in. I can't touch it, meaning it can only ever go in and mess up with my suffixes. Now, the thing is, and I did this on purpose to show you guys, now there's a bit of a problem here. If I do have this mod here, which is prefixes cannot be changed, which is a suffix, and I craft this on, and I do an augment caster, you'll see that there's only 2 prefixes on my wand, right? And even if I have prefixes cannot be changed, if I add a new mod to my wand, that is not changing my prefixes, at least when it comes to the I guess the logic of the game, which means if ever you slam a mod, even if you have prefixes cannot be changed, if there's an open prefix, there's a chance that it's actually going to add a new prefix to your item. And in this case, if we were to augment caster, there's a lot of caster modifiers, and some of them we literally would not be able to actually interact with without being 100% guaranteed that we don't mess up with the prefixes that we've already done. So like I said, I did this on purpose to show to you guys that if I go ahead and I'll do it right away, actually. I'll go to suffixes, and I'll go ahead and do prefixes cannot be changed. So I'm going to remove this. Prefixes cannot be changed. Look what happens if I slam an exalt on it. Now I got a suffix, but look at this. I can actually go again, and in this case, I got a prefix. Now you would think that's impossible because we have prefixes cannot be changed, but adding and removing are kind of treated in a different way. So I'm going to go ahead and remove these two mods. And then what we're going to do to make sure that this doesn't happen is that we are going to augment another prefix that we can remove with harvest. Now we could actually go with anything. We go with fire, we go cold. It doesn't really matter. But if you go with cold or fire or something like that, you have to remember that it's possible that you're going to hit a suffix. So what you'd be looking for here is a mod or a tag which is not part of the suffixes available. And well, we have one of them. Remember, we have the physical. And if we have the cannot roll attack mods on our item here, on our wand, let's go ahead and put it back on. If we have cannot roll attack mods, we already know that we're going to be guaranteed to get the physical as extra chaos. So let's go ahead and do that. Augment physical, boom. Physical as extra chaos is back on our wand. Now, that means that when you're actually crafting your wand, you need to pay attention to the step-by-step. Because here, if you did it the way I did it in this video, you would actually have done something, removed it, and then re-added it because you're going to need it later. So it's important to try to pay attention to not just the current step that you're doing right now, but the next steps that you're going to be doing on your item. Are they going to impair, you know, some of the things you did before, some of the things you're about to be doing later on? So again, crafting is not easy, but it's not about being good at it. It's about knowing versus not knowing. And I really hope that even if this video is probably sounding like complete gibberish, slow it down, watch it a few times. I'm sure you're going to get it. It's not that complicated if you actually care and you want to learn. Okay, so now that we're back with our damage per power charge and all our 3 prefixes with the one that we can remove with harvest crafting, what are we left with? Well, we are left with 2 open suffixes. Now again, we already went over this for the cast speed. We pretty much have to go with caster rerolls because unfortunately, the option for speed rerolls is not very good, especially given the price. So caster reroll is going to be the way to go, but as we mentioned earlier, prefixes are going to be in danger. So we need to actually bench a suffix here, which is going to be prefixes cannot be changed. Now that I have prefixes cannot be changed, I have 3 prefixes. If I augment and I remove and re-add caster modifiers, my prefixes are set in stone. They are never going to be in danger. So let's go ahead and do that. We've got prefixes cannot be changed. What we're going to do here is we are going to augment caster. But before we do that, there's a little bit of a caveat here, right? If you pay attention to the suffixes here, you'll see that there's 2 different caster tags. There's cast speed and there's critical strike chance for spells. Now, this is where knowledge becomes really important because now what you would be tempted to do is do prefixes cannot be changed, augment caster, and then remove add caster over and over again, right? But you can actually guarantee cast speed, or almost guarantee cast speed. Of course, this mod here is a little bit annoying, but you can pretty much guarantee cast speed if you can block this critical strike chance to spells. So this is where you would go ahead and check out, can I bench mod this to actually block it? And you can. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this prefixes cannot be changed, and I'm going to go to the suffixes on the bench, and I'm going to craft on critical strike chance to spells. Now, if I craft on critical strike chance to spells, this mod here, which is the same mod group, cannot roll, right? So I'm basically guaranteed some sort of cast speed, or if I get really unlucky, I guess I could also get the conductivity. So what I'll do is I'll go ahead and at this point, now that I have the spell crit blocked, I can actually augment my caster mod. Now this is, again, pretty much going to give me cast speed every time unless I get super unlucky. Let's see what happens. Boom. I got T3 cast speed. Now, getting T1 cast speed is incredibly hard, so T3 would actually be somewhat acceptable. But if you wanted to go better, this is where, or if you would have rolled something bad, or if you would have actually, you know, rolled on this conductivity mod, this is where you'd actually have to change back to the strategy which we mentioned earlier. Now, since we actually didn't get this mod here, right, and because cast speed has the speed tag, which is not available anywhere else on our item, what we can do is just remove speed. Now, this is obviously going to depend on the price of these different crafts and the rarity of them, speed being one of the rarest one. So maybe it's not a viable strategy, but let's just say that it was. If it was a viable strategy, what we could do is we could actually annul speed, because that's going to keep her spell crit and the rest of her item in in shape and not going to influence anything else. So we can annul speed. You'll see that the cast speed is gone. Now we can augment caster again, and we already have our block for the spell crit, so we can go again. Now we got T5 cast speed. So what do? Annul. Let's go ahead and annul speed, augment caster, and then you could do this until you have a decent roll of cast speed. Now, again, this is going to depend on the price of speed removes by far. That's going to be the most important part. So let's just say that maybe speed rerolls, or sorry, not speed rerolls, but speed removals are very, very expensive. So that's not a good strategy. What are you going to do at this point? Well, this is the point where you'd have to remove your bench mod, and you would instead change it to prefixes cannot be changed. Now, once you put prefixes cannot be changed, your prefixes are locked in, so you can remove and re-add, so replace the caster over and over until you get an amount of cast speed that you are happy with. Now, if we look at caster, though, like I said earlier, the odds of getting a good, cast speed roll, at least T2 and above, is not super high. A lot more chance that you get like crit chance for spells and stuff like that. So it really comes down to the price of caster remove adds versus the price of speed removals. That's essentially what's going to dictate how you go about this. But let's just go ahead and keep going until we have a decent cast speed roll. This might take forever. We got a T3, T5, T3. All right, T2. Let's just keep T2. Now, at that point, we're basically done, right? The only thing that's remaining is going to be crit multi, if we pay attention to my wand in the game. And, well, crit multi, if we pay attention here, it has basically two tags. It has the critical tag and the damage tag. The only tag that we care about is going to be critical. So, what we can do here is just remove add critical until we get what we want. That being said, this mod here, increased critical strike chance, actually has the attack tag, and if we look at any of the other mods on our item, none of them have the attack tag. So it might be cheaper, instead of doing remove add crit, to do augment crit, because there's only going to be crit chance for spells, crit chance, and crit multi, and if you ever hit critical strike chance, you remove attack and then you augment crit again instead of doing remove add crits. It's going to come down to the price of these remove add crits. That's going to be basically what's going to dictate the price of this craft going along. So, if we were to do all of this, we would have one item done. Now, this is what you would consider a mirror tier item, right? So, clearly, this is not meant to be easy to craft. There's a lot that goes into this, and it can be very, very, very expensive, especially depending on your RNG. So let me go ahead and try to get a good roll of critical strike multiplier, and then we're going to call it a day with this specific craft, and we're going to basically go over, once again, the rules. I literally can't hit this, can I? The rules that when it comes to crafting any given item. Okay, well, this thing does not want to hit any sort of decent critical strike multiplier, so I think I'm just going to rage quit because I'm about to run out of currency. All right, I'm just kidding, by the way. This is free. It's an emulator. But here's our T2 rolls. This would be our wand. This would sell for ridiculous amounts of currency. All that would be left is to remove the chaos at that point. So annul chaos. We get rid of the prefix. We can craft on the spell damage with non-chaos as extra chaos. And we've got ourselves a wand, which is absolutely bonkers for a build like Penance Brand. Okay, so now that we actually went over a single craft step by step, what I want to do is basically go over the rules, or the set of rules, basically the rule of thumbs that I use to figure out how to reverse engineer a craft like this. I know that I basically just explained it, but there was a lot of extra stuff that I was talking about during this. So I want to give you guys basically a very clear-cut set of rules. Rule number one, you always start with the hardest mod to get. That is not harvest craftable. That's going to be your rule number one. So in the example, that was damage per power charge, or if we're working with the Ducatis, that would be the Ducatis mod. That's rule number one. You always start with what you can't actually be 100% sure to get. In literally every single case, you always start with that. Rule number 2, remember your bench mods. Remember your bench crafts. Cannot roll attack modifiers. Cannot roll caster modifiers. Prefixes cannot be changed. Suffixes cannot be changed. When it comes to harvest crafting those very high-end items, these 4 modifiers are going to be literally game-changing when it comes to the ability to craft some of these items without spending pretty much infinite amounts of currency, because if you're not using some of these things like cannot roll attack mods and you're trying to force on this +1 spell, you're literally not going to see it in your lifetime. That's how rare this is compared to all of the other physical modifiers. So you need to remember these 4 mods. Meta mods are insane. All right, rule number 3. Always remember that if there's a bench mod that you can craft on, that is going to reduce the pool of mods which your harvest crafts can actually choose from. You always want to use them. Remember, in the example, that would be the case where I actually crafted on critical strike chance to spells, and then when I augmented caster, I was almost guaranteeing a cast speed mod, instead of having to gamble. Maybe I get a cast speed mod, maybe I get a crit chance to spells mod, right? Which makes it literally twice as easy to acquire a cast speed mod, because we're removing half or even sometimes over half of the mod pool that's available. That's going to be the 3 first rules. The 4th rule is going to be, which actually probably what I should have said in the first rule, is going to get a visual of the item that you're trying to craft before you even attempt to it. If you haven't seen an item like visually, and you haven't seen the mods and the tags that are going to be on the item, just hop into Path of Building and create it. And because that's going to be free, right? And you're going to see all of the different mod tags and all that. Then you can actually go ahead and just make the item in the emulator, which, by the way, you don't actually have to craft it. You could basically just guarantee every single roll by just adding it yourself to the item, right? So you get a visualization of what the item looks like before you even start doing it. And honestly, I think that's it, really. Like, that's pretty much the only things that matter. It's understanding that you need to start with the hardest part, and then working your way backwards is how you craft these items, which is probably why a lot of people get confused when they see items with, for example, even now that we have elevated mods, they'll see like 3 or 4 elevated mods on an item, and they're going to be completely blown away. Like, how much luck do you need to make an item like that? A lot of the time, there's not going to be any real sort of luck involved. It's all going to be the importance of going step by step by step, and not actually doing a step that you need to be doing further down the line, the line earlier. Because if you do that, that's when you can start getting into the situation where your item becomes significantly harder to craft. While if you actually keep to the recipe, which the recipe is something you'll have to make up yourself in some cases, not all cases. Sometimes you'll have a video about the item or whatever, but if it's an item that nobody has made any sort of guide on, you'll have to come up with the recipe yourself. And the best way to do that is going to be to go through the exact same, I guess, step by step that I did in this guide to figure out how to exactly craft a wand like this. Okay. I think that's about all I have to say about harvest crafting. This will literally apply to every single item in the game. Now, I know that this has not been, super easy to understand. There's a lot to take into here, but I truly believe that if you actually want to become, somebody who's in the know, instead of this somebody who's not, this is going to be literally the only set of rules and tools that you need to do so. Before I go, though, I want to say a huge thank you to my supporters: Johnny, Michael, Cluzy, Zarashi, Luro, Gaikona, Stefan, Kunin, Michael, JW Player, Scott, Richard, Justin, Alex, Ollie, Matt, Kevin, Marcus, Matthias, Hayden, Bitizen, Axel, and Acid. Thank you guys all so much for the support. Now, the list has become longer, and I want to give you guys a huge thank you for that, making this possible for me. It's been a truly great experience, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.